What did you think overall of today's proceedings?
Today's proceedings focused primarily on the jurisdictional question, the threshold question of whether the Senate has jurisdiction over an impeachment trial over President Trump, given the fact that he's no longer the president of the United States. This is an interesting one. The vote ended up consisting of 56 to 44, 56 voting that we do have jurisdiction, 44 saying that we didn't. This was actually a close question as far as the text of the Constitution goes. The part that persuaded me the most was that, especially in light of the ambiguity that exists in the text of the Constitution, what would happen if we decided that jurisdiction were appropriate here, as unfortunately a majority of the Senate did today? I think the result could be disastrous. I think it's a disastrous thing to say that there's no temporal limitation on the bringing of impeachment charges and the conduct of an impeachment trial, and that it doesn't matter whether somebody's left office before the articles of impeachment are even presented in the Senate. That would be dangerous, and that's why I voted not to recognize jurisdiction in the Senate, given that President Trump left office weeks ago.
Okay, well, hey, I'm glad to hear that because I've already made up my mind in this case, although I'm not a juror. Hey, by the way, we thought of you early in the proceedings when we heard you were an exception to one of the roll calls. I want to play it for you, and you tell us what this is all about, please.
Mr. Langford, aye. Mr. Leahy, aye. Mr. Leahy, aye. Mr. Lee, no.
Now, that was at the very beginning of today, not at the end. I think when you all voted about that constitutional matter you just talked about. What was that about?
Okay, that was a vote on the organizing resolution for the impeachment proceedings themselves, the organizing order setting up the sequence in which arguments will be made and who will make them and in what order. I voted against them, as I did with the last impeachment proceeding a year ago, because I struggle with why it is that we're doing this. For different reasons than we had last time. But in this circumstance, for reasons I just explained, Donald Trump is no longer the president of the United States. And so I think it's inappropriate for us to exercise our jurisdiction. And because I don't recognize that, that informed my vote on whether to vote for the organizing resolution. There were a small handful of us who voted no, and many of us had voted no on the last organizing resolution for the last impeachment a year ago.
So when you gentlemen and ladies are listening to these prosecutors, are you rolling your eyes? Are you like, get over yourselves? I mean, I have the sense that everybody has made up their mind. Or are you really like, not just you, but your colleagues, your peers, attentive and listening, and is anybody swayable? I mean, forgive me, but I feel like, your colleague, your partner there from Utah, Mitt Romney's already made up his mind. I think a lot of folks have already made up their mind. You're there. Give us a sense, please.
Yeah, so I can't speak for anyone but myself, but I will tell you this. I have a book. I filled an entire book. Last time I was there with 257 pages of handwritten notes. I've started doing the same in this book. So the entire time I'm taking notes as we're going through this, copious notes of the arguments that they make. We've been sworn in as senators conducting an impeachment trial, as a court of impeachment. So I think it's my job to decide both the issues of law and the issues of fact before us. And so even though I've read the briefs in advance and I have an idea of where things are going, I think it's part of my job to listen to the arguments and to take them seriously and to make a decision based on whatever I think the law and the facts require.
Now, I noticed this. The Democrats, they played some videos, and they did not include what I'm about to show you. They showed plenty of President Trump's speech from January 6th, but they left this portion out, to the best that I could tell. Go ahead and play it, please.
I know that everyone here will soon be marching over to the Capitol building to peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard.
He explicitly calls for a peaceful and patriotic march. I know you've expressed reservations about, look, he's already out of office, why do this at all? But let's pretend he was still in office. I mean, or doesn't that kind of open and close this case? I find that very convincing. How about you, sir?
Yeah. So when you charge someone with incitement, here he's been charged with incitement of insurrection. It's a pretty significant charge, but more importantly, it carries with it a legal standard. You can't cause an incitement without satisfying a standard that has been outlined by the Supreme Court of the United States and is known by the case of Brandenburg versus Ohio. In that case, the Supreme Court explained that within our system of government, you can't commit the crime of incitement without at least two essential elements being satisfied, one objective and the other subjective. The person has to have engaged in speech that by its very nature could produce imminent lawless action and was designed or spoken subjectively with that as the objective. I don't see how they can satisfy that here. I don't, like I say, I review the arguments as they come in, and I take them seriously because I've taken an oath to do that as a senator sitting in a court of impeachment. But when I look at the charge that they submitted, that they passed in the House of Representatives, it doesn't appear to me to charge the essential elements of incitement. That's a problem for them.
Understood. Understood. Final word, Senator. Anything else you'd like to share? Anything that we as viewers, as citizens, should know about this process or should know about what's going on that's not being talked about? Anything at all?
Yeah. So one thing I would point out is that the vote that happened today, where you had 44 Republicans voting not to recognize the appropriateness of jurisdiction for us to conduct this impeachment trial, that doesn't necessarily signal where people will vote in the final analysis. For example, there could be some who thought that jurisdiction was appropriate and thought that it was okay for us to exercise jurisdiction here, who might vote to acquit at the end of the day.
Okay, what about censure? Is censure on the table? You think, here's what I'm hearing, all right? They're not going to convict him, but they're going to try to censure him. Is that a thing? Is that what you're hearing? Is that your sense? I know you're under oath and all that stuff. And answer that if you don't mind. And if you could also address, there's a push, as you know, to prevent Donald Trump from running for office again. If he isn't convicted, I believe there may be some mechanisms to do that. I want to be clear. I don't want that to happen. How do you feel? And is that a possibility?
I don't think it's a possibility. As to censure, I don't think that's likely. There's some question as to whether anything censuring a person would amount to a bill of attainder, and we're not allowed to do bills of attainder. In theory, you could have a resolution passed by the Senate that said we dislike X, or we disliked X, Y, and Z that were uttered by a particular person. I can't imagine that that's what the Democrats would want to do. And so I don't see that coming. Anything that they would want to do, I strongly suspect would end up amounting to a bill of attainder, which we don't have the authority to do. As far as them seeking some other mechanism to exclude him from running for office, that's strong medicine. And I don't know how they would do that in the absence of some kind of a conviction so as to trigger, I think it's Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. This came up a little bit today when the President's Defense Counsel pointed out you can't just assert that the president has done something wrong and on that basis disqualify him. That would come only if there were some kind of a conviction in a court of competent jurisdiction, which there hasn't been.
Man, you could be on the Supreme Court, sounds like to me. You're good. Senator Lee, appreciate it very much. Good luck in making the right decision. We appreciate it so much. Come back to Newsmax soon. Senator Mike Lee, Republican of Utah.
Thank you.
You bet. Take care now. We'll be right back.